So the last piece of the puzzle is castle. We talked about center, we talked about development of minor pieces, and a little bit about development of heavy pieces. Why does one need to castle? So why do you need to fight for the center? We've established that. Why do you need to develop minor pieces? Well, I would say it's common sense, but mostly the reason is, well, your ultimate goal is to give a checkmate to your opponent's king. Most likely you will need all of your forces. You would need all of your pawns and all of your pieces, so it's only logical to develop them as fast as possible, to the best of your ability. But why do you need to castle? Why can't you stay in the center? Well, maybe you know the answer, but my vision is the following one. If you know that you need to fight for the center, you will put some pawns there. So, for example, if you're white, most likely you would try to put those 2 pawns away to fight for space and center. Another side note. The best defenders are pawns. They are pieces that are of a least value. So it is enough to defend them once if there's one attacker, because you would most likely win material if they capture the pawn. The pawns are the best defenders. Those 2 pawns would leave that poor king in the center, whether you play for white or for black. Or you would push them to some extent to free your bishops in many openings. It relates to white and black, of course. And your king would not be safe anymore because the best defense is gone. The best defenders are pawns, and once you push the central pawns, these 3 pawns to the right or these 3 pawns to the left seems like a decent cover for your king. For example, if you castle short, I'm gonna play bad moves for black on purpose. If you castle short, this is a wall of pawns. Each of them is the least valued piece you can imagine, and they build like a fort or a bridge, or basically they put sticks in front of them. None of the pieces except pawns from your opponent can go to those squares. They would be immediately captured by the pawn, and you wouldn't really care much if you lose that pawn in a way, because you would gain some material. That is why you need to castle. Simple as that. Central pawns go to fight for the center. What do you do with your king? You put it to safety. Where is safety? Behind the pawns. But I just pushed my pawns. Well, you go castle now. In vast majority of cases, it's short castle. For many reasons. The first one is, if you castle long to c1, the d pawn is most likely gone because you needed to develop the bishop, and that's one less cover for your king. Then you would have to manually go to b1 to hide behind those pawns. So it is safer to go short castle because the number of pawns that immediately control your king. And actually, if you castle long, very often people can blunder the pawn on a2 because suddenly the rook has gone, the pawn isn't defended. This is not going to happen in castling short. Second reason is it is faster. Here you just need to move 2 pieces away and that's it, you do the castle. Here there are 3 pieces in the way. That's why it is much less likely to castle long for either sides. For black it is, I can't even think of a decent opening where black does that. I don't know. In some lines, in some openings, very rarely. There are many openings where white does it, and still this is very unlikely. So castle short. And another beauty of castling is that you bring your rook into the game. Otherwise, it would be really difficult to bring your rook to the center or to the open files. And usually, since you push the central pawns, usually files get open in the middle of the board. Because I push the pawns, my opponent pushes the pawns, some captures happens, open files or semi-open files. So as we didn't talk about semi-open files, for example, d4, knight c3 takes knight e4. This is a semi-open file for white, and that is semi-open file for black. It's not entirely open, there are still pawns there, but these are not your own pawns. So if you put the rook on e1 in this position, it would be putting pressure on the pawn on e6. So usually files get open in the center. You need your rook in the center. How can you do that? You castle. And that is pretty much it, what I want you to know about the castle. Again, the devil is in details, and the detail is you should do it as fast as possible. Very often white can afford to put more pawns in the center first. Black does not have that luxury if white is doing its best. Now we are ready to proceed to the next part of this course. I hope what I explained was not too sophisticated and relatively clear and obvious to you. That is a very misleading feeling if you get that. In the next section, I would show you the games, very famous games that you may have seen in some books or in articles, where in most cases it's white who was crushing black. That is a selection of games where one of the sides did not follow the rules of playing the opening to its best ability. I would show you games, game I guess, what happens if you don't fight for the center. It is a very bright game, so one is enough. I would show you games, what would happen if you delay a development of some of your pieces, whether it's minor pieces or, in some cases, heavy pieces like rooks. And later I would show you what happens if you delay your castle. Boy, lots of things could go wrong if you delay your castle. I think that's enough base for you to enjoy the games that I prepared for you. I will see you in the next chapter of Famous Games.